What do you say we get back to work on our little wrapped eye trade axe or tomahawk? In the first video, we did all of the forging steps, did a little bit of rough grinding, which I didn't show in the video. Now it's time just to clean it up any more than it needs, which isn't going to be much. There's just a little bit in here that I'd like to shape a little better, and then start establishing the bevel. Then we'll harden it, temper it, finish grinding it, sharpen it, and then we'll put it on a commercially made tomahawk handle, which just happens to match the drift that I was using, so that part should be really easy. This should be pretty quick to just clean up this one little area where the transition isn't quite as smooth as I would like. I think I'll rough it in with the angle grinder, finish it with file. Should go pretty quick. Now I just want to rough in the bevels. I'm not going to take it all the way down yet. I want to leave it thick when we harden and temper it, but I just want to establish where the bevel will be. So that's really all we need to do to that. It is ready to harden and temper. The cutting edge is 1075. 1075 is an oil hardening steel, which kind of surprises me for a simple carbon steel. You'd think it'd be water hardening, but the guide says oil, so we're going to harden it in oil. And we're just going to go ahead and do this in the forge today. I would typically use the electronic oven, but there's no reason you can't do this in the forge. This is not a highly precision tool. This is a relatively simple, primitive form of an axe, so using simpler methods seems appropriate. I've got the forge warmed up and I've taken the time to preheat my oil, so now it's time to bring our axe head up to critical temperature. I'm going to do that relatively slowly, as always. Now as this comes up to heat, I'm going to turn the forge off from time to time to keep from getting it too hot too fast. Now because this is a simple steel, non-magnetic does play a part in this, and that still attracts a magnet, so we know that's too cold. But it needs to be above non-magnetic, so just that little, so just when the magnet quits sticking is not quite hot enough. It needs to be a little bit hotter than that. That technique really is not very accurate with more complex steels, but with these simple carbon steels, it's not a bad way to go. Okay, this corner doesn't stick. This does, so I'm going to make sure that's in the hot spot. The part that's still magnetic is what's in the hot spot. That's probably all good. I'm just going to let it soak just a hair longer. And into the quench. You want to move it up and down so it quenches evenly. I'm only trying to quench the very edge of this, about the last 3/4 or an inch of it. I want to leave some heat back in the back. I'm going to come over and I'm going to clean that up with an angle grinder. And hopefully you'll be able to see the colors run here. I'm starting to see a little bit of bronze in here. What we want to go for is in that kind of bronze range. If this is going to be used as a throwing axe, you might want to go into the peacock or the purple range. Sort of depends on what it's going to be used for. And hopefully there's still enough heat up here. You can always temper this in the kitchen oven. Just set it to about 400 degrees and go for that. It pays to do some experiments with your chosen steel to see what color range you like it at. Now I can tell this is moving faster on this corner than it is this corner. So I'm going to probably quench this in a second. Yeah, the same thing's happening on this side, so it's moving evenly. So I'm going to quench that part and leave the corner that isn't quite hot enough out of the quench for now. And hopefully that way this will start to move down into here. So one of the advantages of the kitchen oven is it does make for more even temper. Or a toaster oven. I keep a toaster oven in the shop just for tempering. But there is some color moving into here. Then I'm going to quench the entire head, and that kind of gives it a nice baked in oil finish, which makes it look good. But we're not quite there yet. I'm hoping you can see that in the camera. I'm not actually seeing colors moving anymore. I think it's pretty much done. So this is where we're going to leave it. Like I say, quench the whole thing. Now because my oil is good and hot, this is probably still too hot to touch, but it's below the tempering temperatures. So somewhere in the 250 to 300 range, which is hotter oil than I want to grab. So we're going to let that finish air cooling until I can hold on to it. So that's it for the hardening and the tempering of our little axe, just done in the forge. Very simple, very easy to do. That is not the most precise nor the most accurate way of hardening and tempering. So if you're making really fine tools that need very precise hardening and tempering techniques, that's probably not the way I would go. But again, this is a simple, relatively primitive tool with simple carbon steel. And I really think that's a good way to go for something like this. It's in keeping with the spirit of the project and of the tool itself. So the last thing that needs to be done is it needs to have just a final grind to get this almost sharp and a final sharpening. Typically that is something I would probably do on the belt grinder. It's fast, it's easy that way, but not everybody has that equipment available. If you have an angle grinder, this is a good place to use it. Make sure you don't overheat this at this point. You've already tempered it. If you turn it blue, you are then over tempering the steel and it's going to be softer than you wanted. For this tool, that might not matter that much. Again, a lot of people use these as throwing axes, and having it a little bit softer doesn't hurt. It's better to bend it than it is to break it. But I'm going to go ahead and just real quickly take a little bit more off of this so it's close to sharp. As you're doing this, make sure you're looking for any thick spots or thin spots. Grind a little bit more in the thick spots and don't grind so much in the thin spots. It seems logical, but it's easy to go too far sometimes. Now for the final sharpening, I'm just going to use a file. This helps tell you if it's too hard or too soft. This is fairly hard. It's not filing easily at all. Now when I sharpen an axe like this, I don't want a perfectly flat bevel. I want a little bit of a convex bevel, kind of a watermelon seed or a cannel grind, I've heard it referred to. And that just makes it a little bit stronger. It's not as sharp an edge, but again, this is not a woodworking tool. So I kind of roll my file as I get to that sharp edge. And that's just up to what you want this to be, nor am I going to make it razor sharp. So that completes our little tomahawk. It's all ready to go. It's been hardened, it's been tempered. It is sharp enough to be a simple chopping axe, split kindling wood, things like that. You can make it sharper, you can put a flatter bevel on it. That's just up to what you want to use it for. But if people are using these as throwing axes, they're throwing them at a target. Usually it's a big round of the end of a log. They end up in the dirt as often as they end up in the target, and therefore I don't want it real sharp. It's just going to get messed up anyways. And people almost never go back and sharpen them if they're using them for that. So the last thing we need is a handle. Now I buy commercially made tomahawk handles. These are available multiple places. I like to buy mine from House Handle Company, and I will put a link to House Handle Company down there in the video description. They sell different sizes, different weights, depending on if you're making big tomahawks or small tomahawks. And these handles are tapered, so they go in from the top side, and centrifugal force, whether you're swinging the axe or throwing it, means the handle stays in place. But they are also easily replaced, because if you're throwing it, you're going to break a lot of handles. So that's really all there is to putting a handle on. And I buy several dozen of these at a time, and I try different handles, and they all fit just a little differently. You can probably see that, see how that's fitting. And that's really all there is to it. If you want to do something to your handle, to decorate it, to ornament it, you are certainly welcome to do that. But like I say, people use these as throwing axes. They break handles. That's a real waste if they're going to break a handle. If it's a wall hanger, an ornamental piece for something, do whatever you feel like doing for the handle. Handle length for throwing, I like one that comes about to my elbow, so I need to cut a few inches off of this one. So that completes our simple wrapped eye axe, trade axe, tomahawk, whatever you want to call it. It's all ready to go out, and I think I've had some requests. I need to get back to you by email for the couple of people who sent me an email asking if this would be available for sale. Just one final thought on the handle. If you decide you want to wedge a handle in here, you want a handle that won't come out because you're not using it as a throwing axe, when you put the wedge in, put it in this way. Put it in at 90 degrees to the blade. That way the stress is not trying to force the weld apart. These welds are pretty strong, but because you don't get much chance to refine the weld right up here, it isn't as strong a weld as it is down in this part of the axe. This part of the axe is never coming apart, but right up here by the eye, you can over wedge that. You can make it start to open up. But if you put the wedge in going this direction, it's spreading with the strength of the material instead of trying to force that weld apart. I hope you enjoyed this project and enjoyed the videos. Give it a thumbs up if you did. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you hit that subscribe button. If you want to receive notifications when I make new videos, ring that bell down there next to the subscribe button. Stick around, watch a few of the other videos, share the videos with your friends or on social media. But then by all means, make time in your day to get out to your shop. Make something, but stay safe. Wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next one. If you would like to provide financial support for the videos here at Black Bear Forge, there are links to both PayPal and Patreon in the video description. These are merely donations. The content is free and will remain free. Thank you.